This is the FunBelt podcast, part of the Believe Network.
Hosts the Dusty Thibodeau of Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper of Howlraiser, and Shane Metlin of the Daily News Record.
I think it's potentially a very good week for the Sun Belt.
But I'm just kind of going off on a random rant. It's just frustrating. It's back for another episode of FunBelt Podcast. We were missing Shane last week. This week we missed Jeremy, and somehow I'm just caught in the middle. Welcome back, though, Shane.
Well, thanks for letting me come back, even though I'm a shell of myself.
It happens.
Yeah.
It was a crazy week. I mean, not really too many upsets. I think maybe that Coastal Carolina was able to go to App State and get the big win there. Texas State put a drumming on ULM. Maybe that was a little bit of an upset there as well. Overall, what were your thoughts there of week 11 there, Shane?
Yeah, I think, maybe you hit on it that it was more the scores and how out of hand some of them got that were the bigger upsets than like the actual winning teams. Because, I mean, there were a little more blowouts than I expected maybe this week. But the results, I'm not sure were that far off from what we predicted, I think. Or I guess maybe I wasn't even involved in predicting these ones. My mind is fried.
It happens once again. I mean, we're grinding through. We're at week 11 of the season. You've already mailed it in because you're already bowl eligible. Basketball's already rocking and rolling. I get it, Shane. We're just glad that you hang out with us, the common folks.
I am a basketball guy at heart too, so it's like my mind is elsewhere a little bit.
So you were greatly checking out ULM's victory over Champion Baptist.
Yeah, of course. Coach Richard, he's racking up the victories and off to a good start down there.
Yeah, year 15 off to a great start for him there as well. But shifting gears back to football, I really think that the team to beat right now in all of the Sun Belt and the West, the Raging Cajuns, they are just putting it to everybody they play. Arkansas State found that out for homecoming there in Lafayette. Ben Woldridge, 264 and only one touchdown. But Draylon Washington, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bill Davis, 65 yards, 2 touchdowns. They literally ran all over the Red Wolves. Thoughts on that one there, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, the more we see from the Raging Cajuns, the more I just think back to that home game against Tulane where they didn't look that great. I mean, nothing about like Louisiana that weekend really inspired you. At this point, though, it looks like it's not a bad loss, but it's one of those ones where like if they'd have played the way they have been the last few weeks, we'd be talking about, is it Louisiana or is it Boise? Like that's what the playoff comes down to basically. And, that close to being in that conversation right now, you're kind of on the outside looking in. But yeah, give the Cajuns and Mike DeSormo all kinds of credit for huge bounce back, not just from that loss, but just this season has been a bounce back to like what Cajuns fans expect down there.
Yeah. And like I've said before, I don't know if it's their offense. I don't know if it's their defense, the special teams, because they all seem to be clicking. That's really carrying this team. I mean, the defense had 4 sacks, 2 interceptions there of Jalen Rayner. Butch Jones even turned to backup Timmy McClain, the Central Florida transfer. He was 2 of 2 for 25 yards in his debut there for the Red Wolves. But it was a straight whooping. I don't think that it was really even that close of a game. I think 55-19 was your final score. It was just straight whooping, much like Marshall, who went down to Hattiesburg to look for their win for bowl eligibility, and they got it easily there. Braylon Braxton, 220 with a touchdown. Ethan Payne, 104 for a touchdown. Braxton added another one on the ground. I don't see a team that can really stop Marshall right now, and that's after seeing them firsthand. And then the defense, that's just on the offensive side. The defensive side, they were just as good with 3 interceptions of Ethan Crawford. Marshall caught fire.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, if we're going to be fair, we talk about the Louisiana, the one they won back where they almost had the big win. Like if Marshall doesn't give up that big league at Georgia Southern, what are we talking about with the Herd right now as far as like being the clear favorites in the East? And, how good of a game will they give Louisiana in the championship game? Right now the East is kind of a mess and completely wide open, but the Herd's that close to really being the team in the East right now.
They are, and I think that one thing that's really kind of surprising to me is that it almost feels like Huff is on the hot seat and coaching for his job. It's a contract year. He's got them at 6 wins. They're really contending well in the East. Sure, they've had a couple of meltdown losses there, as you mentioned with the Georgia Southern game, but I don't know what else he could really do. I mean, he's landing the big time transfers. He's landing the big time recruits. He's getting it done.
Yeah, and I mean it's just really hard to have those kinds of, really really outstanding, 10, 11 win seasons. Those are hard to put together, especially in that Sun Belt East division, where, right now we're looking at a Georgia State team that hasn't won a conference game and they beat Vandy. That's how good and deep it is every week. You could get beat every time you go out there, even if you're a really good team. And yeah, I mean, Charles Huff, I think, has done more than enough to save his job at this point, but you never know. I mean, it's Marshall. There's so much tradition and so much expectations that I get their fans being a little bit frustrated, but right now I think the Herd's looking pretty damn good.
You think they could beat James Madison?
I think it's possible. I mean, it's a home game for JMU, which I think helps. It's, I don't know how those, weekend after Thanksgiving games, sometimes what the crowd will be like. It may not be quite as much of like the student section factor and stuff. That is a really big deal at JMU. I think is part of what makes their home field advantage so great. But, we'll see. I think that should be a really good game in Harrisonburg.
I thought it was the streamers was the big delta.
Yeah, that too.
The week kicked off on Thursday night with Coastal Carolina, App State getting it started. This was pretty much an all Coastal Carolina game. Joey Aguiar, though, 2 interceptions. They led to 10 points for Coastal Carolina. I think that was your real difference of the game, though. One was in the first quarter, led to a field goal. The other one in the third quarter, leading to 7 points on the board. Ethan Vasco, not really a standout game. 14 of 18 for 150 yards and 1 touchdown. It was really just kind of a good defensive game for Coastal Carolina, and then a all-around offensive explosion there with Braylon Bennett getting 3 rushing touchdowns, but only 88 yards on the ground. Your thoughts on that game there, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't a star performance for Ethan Vasco, but I think if you're Coastal, you look at that and say, like, he took a step back in the direction towards maybe where he had been, where he's doing enough in the passing game. He's running the ball a little bit, moving the ball down the field, even if it's, in the running game more than the passing game, and not making a ton of mistakes. I feel like if you're Coastal, after a few weeks where it was almost time to write them off, to get that win against, as much as App State struggled, to get that one on national TV for Vasco to play the way that he did, I think, yeah, you got to at least feel like, okay, maybe we can salvage something this season if you're Coastal.
Texas State picked up win number 5, going to ULM in a absolute torrential downpour game. But Shane, I think more importantly, what if I told you that the Bobcats were able to win really without Jordan McLeod?
Yeah, that part of it's a little bit surprising. I guess, the rain, everything kind of makes things a weird situation. And, I think, before we started recording, you said maybe just, the motivation factor didn't seem to be there for ULM playing in the rain. And, as good as that defense looked early in the season, you almost kind of like think they would have been a team that would drive and, a complete mud bowl type of situation. But yeah, you got to give Texas State credit for showing up in the environment and, taking care of business. And, a season that maybe started so strong for ULM. Is it starting to get away from the Warhawks a little bit at this point?
It definitely feels that way, and I know the fan base is breaking the panic button on the mash. Aiden Armenta, not a great outing. 13 of 24 for 119 and an interception. The interception, really, though, the receiver just slipped in the elements there. Receiver would have been open, but when the only one there is a defensive back, kudos to Texas State defensive back for catching the interception. True freshman, though, Brad Jackson was really the story of the game coming in at the quarterback position. Only 4 of 9 for 16 yards passing, but he didn't have to really pass. It was all his leg work, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And then Deion Hankins, a transfer from UTEP, 117 for another touchdown. Shane, that was the second time he had ever been in Malone Stadium, dating back to when he played at UTEP. Both times, over 100 yards rushing.
Yeah, I guess if he happens to hit the portal again, somebody Brian Vincent might want to look at because he likes to be there.
He loves to be there. Another guy that loves to be there, Ahmad Hardy. 6th game this season, over 100 yards. He finished with 105 and 2 touchdowns. The only scores other than Max Larson's field goal in that. We'll preview it here shortly there, Shane, but the Warhawks have the tall task at hand as they go to Auburn, where they are 0-11 all time against the Tigers. Tigers fighting for bowl eligibility already with 6 losses. Why couldn't we make it 7?
Yeah, I mean, a few weeks ago, I think that had upset special written all over it, didn't it? Like the way both teams are kind of heading now. Now you're ULM, you're just crossing your fingers, hoping there's one more victory left on that schedule, and they get bowling.
And what sucks is I feel like this is the true ULM story. Every time that they hit the 6-win mark, that's not good enough to get into the bowls. And if you look at it right now, the FunBelt has 5 guaranteed bowl slots. And out of that, there's 7 teams that are either already at the 6-win mark or more, or they're at 5 knocking on the door.
Yeah, although
two
Keith
teams could be
12
sitting
last year. I think he'll get them in somewhere if they're eligible. But yeah, it's no guarantee.
Yeah, and that's always scary. That I feel like we had appeased the chief early on in the year, and for some reason he is pissed again. Maybe it's because you missed last week's show, Shane.
Possibly.
So I will direct all emails, DMs that I get regarding ULM to you.
Yep, send them my way. It's definitely my fault.
Another angry fan base at the Shane Metlin. They weren't mad at you, though, after that game that James Madison had on Saturday, beating Georgia State pretty soundly. Alonzo Barnett, 241 and 3 touchdowns. Petaway getting it done on the ground with 95 yards and a touchdown there as well. But Zach Gibson continues to kind of shine there for the Panthers, getting it done with 213 and a touchdown there. What are your thoughts there on Georgia State? Do you feel that while they may not be winning the games, that they're definitely positioning themselves to be successful next season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was always, we've joked sometimes about the coaches who throw out the year 0 situation, but with Del McGee coming in when he did, spring practice being, put on pause because your coach leaves in the middle of it. Like, that's a true year 0 situation. You're not even getting the full effect of the portal and everything. Like, you really can't even begin to start judging him on wins and losses until probably year 3, and, maybe a little bit more next year, but I think he's going to get it done. I think, the energy's right. People in Atlanta, as far as from everything I hear, high school programs in Georgia like what's happening there, and that's going to be key for them.
Yeah, I mean, we say it all the time that we think that this year was definitely a wash. I mean, take out the Vandy game, but getting such a late jump on the season, definitely the year 0, and I think the sky's the limit for them, though, going forward. So on week 11, any teams there, Shane, that really stand out to you as still being the shocker or the disappointment team?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that Coastal app game was one of those ones where like the winner's going to be going in the right direction and the losers got to be wondering what's happening with their season. And it was a close game, and Coastal pulls it out. So I feel like that was kind of like, if there was like a measuring stick happening this week, that was maybe the one to really keep an eye on. The other ones, like I said earlier, it's not a surprise that Louisiana wins again. It's a surprise that they just really run Arkansas State off the field. Maybe even similar situation for Texas State, ULM. Not super surprised that Marshall wins in a blowout or that JMU does at home, but just the fact that basically there weren't any close games this week is probably like the biggest surprise, and maybe the biggest. I'm raising my eyebrows a little bit at those teams that won so convincingly.
Yeah, it's definitely a little crazy that there were such lopsided scores this late in the season, where you would think that while there could be some injuries, that everyone's kind of found themselves, they've hit their stride, they know what they're looking at. One thing that we're looking at also, James Madison, they win the women's soccer title. Shane, did you get a T-shirt? Are you excited about going into the postseason for women's soccer?
I am not a soccer guy by any stretch. Like, I don't really understand the game. Like, if I cover it and stuff, you're not getting a ton of analysis from me. But I will say, JMU picked up this woman, Ginny Lackey. She's a true freshman from England who's been with Man City over there. Decided she wanted to go to college. And when she becomes cleared by the NCAA midway through this season, she is unbelievable. She's putting up points every time she takes the field. Completely changed the trajectory of that team, probably the program, because I mean she's a true freshman and absolutely one of the best players in the country. And it's just, if you want to pay attention to the FunBelt and the NCAA soccer tournament, it might be fun to do, because that's a pretty cool, crazy story that, she winds up at JMU and in the FunBelt and just kind of turns everything on its head.
Yeah. And JMU's win snapped the streak. Old Dominion had won 2 straight in a row prior to that. Do you think James Madison gets it done to where they get a high enough seed and can maybe get it done in the tournament?
We'll see. I mean, last year the FunBelt women's soccer ended up getting a few at-large bids too, and nobody was really in position to like win or go on a run. But we've talked about the men's soccer being kind of like a power conference a lot. I mean, the women's soccer is getting there, at least to being a multi-bid league, and JMU now making it back-to-back NCAA tournaments. Maybe they do get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to seeding. The best thing that can happen is maybe you're not on somebody's home field in a little pod situation. So, we'll see how it turns out. I think the selection show is tomorrow afternoon, so I might roll over there and see where the Dukes end up.
So with that, we roll on to week 12. Shane, there's no gong. Jeremy bogarts the gong, so we don't have it to actually play second and short this week. So we just have to do a traditional preview.
Okay. I mean, I think we've got plenty of time since there's only 2 of us too. Like, we can each take an extra minute, right?
Yeah, it's like a 2-minute drill.
Yeah.
Kicking off the week, rather. James Madison at Old Dominion. What do they call this? The Royal Battle, the Reign Supreme.
Royal Rivalry, I think, is the official
Royal
at this point.
There we go. It's taking place in Norfolk, Virginia. No game time set just yet. What are your thoughts there on this upcoming game?
At 4:00 Eastern.
Well, the FunBelt has not updated their official stats.
All right.
Sorry that I have the beat writer on that can tell me the exact.
Well, I'm just letting everybody who listens to us for the game times, which I'm sure is exactly what everybody tunes in for.
Exactly.
No knows. I don't remember.
What's also on the Royal Rivalry?
I think it ended up being like a pretty close game last year, even though JMU was pretty heavy favorite. Dukes blew them out. in the first meeting when they both joined the FunBelt down in Norfolk. I think JMU, looking at the line, they're a more narrow favorite this time around, 3.5. Probably sounds about right with the ODU being a little bit up and down, but it's a good Monarchs team. I think this is their best chance to get a victory, get back into the win column in the history. I mean, people probably think that these teams have played like 100 times. They've only played a handful of times. So I think ODU would move back ahead in the all-time series if they win this one. And down in Norfolk, I think they have a decent shot. Their offense is getting going. JMU is a little inconsistent. They played really well coming off the bye week. Can they make it 2 weeks in a row where the offense moves the ball and puts some points on the board? I think that's the big question.
I really like Old Dominion in here, and here's why. They're coming in off of a bye. They've had a chance to get Colton readjusted into the game plan. They were able to get everybody healthy. It's at home. I really like this Old Dominion team. I like them to pull the upset over James Madison. As you said, the bet online spread at 3.5. Give me the Monarchs. I guess we're on opposite ends there, Shane.
No, I think we're pretty in line.
I like them straight up. I'd
okay.
take the money line.
I think it could go either way.
Yeah. 11:45 on the SEC network. ULM travels to the plains of Auburn for the 12th all-time meeting. There have been 2 games that were close, the last one being in 2012 where Warhawks lost in overtime on a missed field goal that then allowed Auburn to kick the game winner. Warhawks licking their wounds after dropping their 3rd straight. Auburn struggling for their postseason eligibility under the Hugh Freeze regime. They're already at 6 losses, Shane. I don't know what the bet online spread of this game is, but I'll tell you, I like the Warhawks to cover it regardless what it is. But I just, until this team kind of gets back to where we had seen them early on in the year, I don't think the Warhawks have it in them to actually get the win going.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because the spread that I'm seeing is Auburn by given 24, which seems like a lot. I mean, Auburn's not putting up that kind of points on anybody right now. ULM, as much as they're not maybe the ULM from the first month of the season, that's still a legit defensive line they're throwing out there. It's still a team that has the potential to, run the ball, control the tempo, control time possession a little bit. Like, I'd be shocked if it's that out of whack. As I mentioned before, this was my, back in early October, this was my, I can't wait till we get to this week because that's going to be the big upset kind of game. I don't know if I'm there with the Warhawks right now, but I do think it's going to be competitive. I think they're going to bounce back a little bit from whatever happened down in San Marcos, and we'll see a better effort. And they've got nothing to lose and everything to gain in this game if you're ULM, and I think we'll probably see that kind of effort from the Warhawks.
Texas State game was at home, by the way, Shane.
Oh, was it? Okay.
That's what hurt even more.
I'm sorry,
but I think I feel like these last 3 weeks the Warhawks have pressed trying to get that win number 6 for bowl eligibility instead of just kind of playing the game. And as cliche as it is of going 1-0, they haven't really done that. I think if they can kind of flush the season and say, hey, let's ruin Auburn's season more than it is helping our season, and really kind of take that underdog mentality, kind of the 134 mentality that they came into the season with, I think that's what gives them the best chance to really go in and compete and play a solid game and potentially come out of the Plains with their first ever win.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they did, but it's just I think it's a taller task than maybe it looked like not that long ago.
Straight up noon in Huntington, West Virginia, home of the Tudor's Biscuit. Shane, I didn't get to discuss the Tudor's Biscuit with you. Are you a Tudor's fan, by the way?
I am. You talked to Noah Fleischman a few years ago. We were coming back from Louisville, and I made him stop in Hurricane, West Virginia, to make sure we got tutors before we got home. So I am.
What'd you get?
I ended up just getting a bag full of like biscuits to bring home for everybody. I mean, I don't know. I may have gotten a sandwich too. I don't have like necessarily like a go-to when it comes to the sandwiches, but the biscuits in general can't miss when you're in West Virginia.
Yeah, the biscuit was definitely legit. The egg just brought it way down in my book. I can't emphasize that enough.
And I want some credit from my herd people too for pronouncing hurricane right.
That's not how you say it.
It is.
Not a true story.
Yeah.
But what is a true story, at noon, Coastal Carolina will take on the Thundering Herd at noon. This Marshall team, I think, has found themselves and really found their way, getting that close win there against ULM, showing that they could go on the road to get the win there at Southern Miss. It's the special 75 game this weekend against Coastal Carolina. I'd never want to be the opponent in that game because I feel like you're playing not just the 11 guys on the field, but you're playing the angels in the sky, everyone in the city of Huntington, and really everyone that's ever been affiliated with that program. I like the Herd to just roll over and grab this win.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that game is always, worth a few points for Marshall when they play that one. Coastal, they did get that win against App last week. Seems like it's been a long time since that's happened though at this point, with that weeknight game. I think, Coastal's so up and down. Marshall's kind of finding their footing. I do really like the Herd in this one.
Yeah, and as we said, I'm not real sure why Huff. It feels like he's kind of on the hot seat, maybe so to say. But I think that this gives them 7 wins and still keeps them in that Eastern race, so that they're able to continue to contend for the East title, as well as improving their bowl berth possibilities. Coming up at 3:00, Troy heads to beautiful Eagle Creek for a game that BetOnline has at 7.5 for the Golden Eagles, not the Golden Eagles, the Georgia Southern Eagles.
Yeah, regular Eagles.
Yeah, the regular Eagles. They're only golden when they go for a dip in beautiful Eagle Creek. I'll tell you, Troy's kind of surprised me that they seem like they finally quit caring about the season and just kind of going out, taking the bull by the horn, so to say, and just playing football. With that said, though, J.C. French and Helton, they're not going to lose a game at home against Troy, a team that they have been able to really down here in the past. Plus, Georgia Southern, once again, still trying to compete for that Eastern title and trying to be able to take on the Cajuns out of the West Side in that Sun Belt Conference Championship.
Yeah, because, I felt kind of good for Troy where they were able to get that win against Coastal and, break that streak, get another victory this season, because they've been hard to come by. But Georgia Southern's playing for too much right now. They're right there with, or Marshall's right there with them for the Sun Belt lead right now. Georgia Southern obviously has the tiebreaker from that crazy game we talked about earlier. They just can't go out and lose to a team like Troy at this point. It's chaos in the East if they do, and there's too much the Eagles are playing for right now to let off the gas enough to let Troy really have much of a chance in this one.
4:00. Arkansas State, fresh off their loss at Louisiana Lafayette, travels to the ATL to take on Georgia State. Arkansas State favored by 1 point per BetOnline, essentially a pick'em game. I like Georgia State at home because Arkansas State, I think, is kind of lost. I think that they are trying to find themselves, trying to right the ship. Georgia State, as you said, they have nothing to lose, everything to gain. I think they go all out on this game and wind up getting win number 3 for new head coach Dell McGee.
Yeah, and I think, the thing that maybe gets lost with Georgia State a little bit is, in all the losses that they've had is they've got some legit playmakers. And Ted Hurst in particularly, just catches touchdowns and it's tough to stop. And, there's probably another game left in him this year where he just goes off and maybe comes down with three touchdown passes that are kind of thrown up for grabs and really makes a difference. And like I said, Arkansas State might be a little bit lost at this point. Georgia State maybe wants to come back after not their best showing last week and gets home. And I think probably we maybe see the last, not necessarily the last gasp, but we see one more really solid performance from the Panthers.
5 o'clock. Bet Online has it as Louisiana Lafayette favored by 8.5 as they host South Alabama. The Cajuns are hands down one of the hottest teams, just outside the AP top 25. I think they came in at 26, 29, somewhere right around there. I like the Cajuns just because I don't see where anybody but the Cajuns could beat themselves, and I still think that they would put up a good fight and probably wind up dropping that game as well. So I like the Cajuns, especially at home. South Alabama just can't get it done. Roll Vermillion.
Yeah. The Cajuns, you talk about them beating themselves. They're just not a team that really does that either. Ben Woldridge, let's give him so much credit. I mean, I think we end up talking about him every week, but then it seems like we don't talk about him enough because the guy comes back and does what he's done this year and just been so effective, so crisp and clean with everything he's done to keep that offense moving just enough. I say just enough after they put up 55 last week, but he's just been the perfect guy for the perfect team at Lafayette this year. And I didn't say Lafayette, I meant as a location, not as the name of the school.
I love that I'm rubbing off on you there, Shane.
Yeah. So, he's the guy that I just don't see them. I don't see him allowing the offense to make enough mistakes to not get the job done when they go play South Alabama.
I mean, I feel like even if Woldridge has a bad game, like I said, the special teams, the kicking game, defense, as long as 2 of the 3 are clicking, I don't really see where this team is in any kind of danger or any kind of trouble. All 3 phases are just that great. And quite honestly, I'm wondering, I know that you wanted to anoint Brian Vincent as coach of the year whenever he was able to kind of rock it out to that 5-1 start. Is it Mike DeZormo that's maybe coach of the year now for the Sun Belt Conference?
Yeah, I mean, if ULM still gets the 6th win, gets to a bowl, I think it might be Vincent, but I'm not going to argue if somebody really wants to push for DeSormo at this point. I mean, I think everything he's done has been great. And any other year too, it would be the story too, because it's the guy who, the hometown guy who's hung around and took over the program. And it was kind of a question if it was going to work, after a couple of years. And, you stick with him and you give him the time and it pays off. It would be the story without a doubt, if not for Brian Vincent and the Warhawks. And it might end up being that way anyway if they win out and ULM struggles to get another win.
The upset special closes out the night. Southern Miss, Texas State. Bet Online has this as a 26-point favorite for Texas State. While I got to see that Texas State offense and how great it can be clicking on all cylinders, even when it's not Jordan McLeod or Maldy or the normal names that we all know and love. But 26 points is a lot. And with Southern Miss having nothing to play for on the road, yes, they laid an egg last week when Marshall came to town, but I just don't see them doing that this week where they have a chance to rain on Texas State's parade as Texas State tries to get that 6th win and become bowl eligible themselves. Texas State still gets it done, but it's a squeaker and not a 26-point victory.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking somewhere in between squeaker and 26-point victory. I think, Texas State can win by 2 or 3 scores, but yeah, 27, 26 seems like a big line for Southern Miss. As tough as it has been for Southern Miss, you look at the record. How often have they really just been truly blown out like that by other teams in the Sun Belt? And I know like the score didn't look good against Marshall. Even then, the offense didn't get anything done, but they're giving up 37 points. Like, it's not necessarily like get run off the field type of style for the Golden Eagles. I'd be surprised if it gets that bad unless they're just done for the year, which you never know. One of these weeks, if they just kind of pack it in, it's hard to blame them or be too surprised. But I just haven't noticed that Southern Miss is a team that gets blown out like that very often.
Yeah, this year's definitely been the true delta there of those statistics there. But that's a wrap for week 12, Shane. We made it through without Jeremy. We made it through gong free. Maybe that's a new look for second and short.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it too late to send it to Jeremy to let him throw some gongs in there? Like,
who knows?
Yeah,
I don't even know where he is. For all I know, he didn't make it back from Lafayette this past weekend.
Yeah, he did just say he couldn't do it. He didn't really give any explanation, did he?
No, he didn't. So maybe he's being held hostage. Maybe he's crying himself to sleep. I really don't know the context. Basketball season is also in full swing there, Shane. No real big upsets in the Sun Belt Conference. We talked last time about how we were able to get the big wins there over the MAC in the Sun Belt MAC Challenge. But for the most part, non-conference games have kind of gone normal. There really haven't been any major upsets. There really haven't been any big victories. It's been kind of status quo.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great start in the MAC Challenge for the Sun Belt, getting 8 wins. Exactly what you kind of want to do when you're the home team for that round of it. There's been some interesting non-conference games. I think A-State being competitive with Alabama. Obviously they get a little attention for the bus breaking down. Brian Hodgson's getting in there and fixing it himself. So, that was a fun story for the Red Wolves. Would have been even more fun if they could have, held on for that one. But being competitive, I think that's pretty good showing for A-State. Georgia Southern, I think it's worth noting that they didn't win a non-conference game last year. They get their MAC Challenge game. They almost pulled off a road game at UNCW, where UNCW hardly ever loses at home. That's a good mid-major program in the CAA. They almost pulled off a win there. Like, that's a much improved Georgia Southern team that gave some teams trouble in the Sun Belt last year anyway, but really struggled in the non-conference. So I think that's a good sign for the Sun Belt too, as they're trying to kind of build their profile a little bit, that even some teams toward the bottom, I think, are going to be a little bit better this year.
Yeah, but that's the way it is. Same on the women's side, really kind of status quo as well. Not really a whole lot going on there of major upsets, major wins. Kind of won the games you're supposed to, didn't win the games you weren't supposed to.
Yeah, similar. I know JMU goes on the road to Notre Dame this week, so it'll be kind of an opportunity for them to, play spoiler. It's tough in women's basketball, especially, I think, where sometimes the athleticism is a huge difference between some of those programs and the mid majors. But, JMU's got some opportunities to pull off some big upsets with their schedule this year. So if they can do it once, it might really help the conference.
Around the NCAA, Shane, I know this was something you wanted to sign up for, but NCAA's golden child Diego Pavia at Vandy has decided to sue, saying that his JUCO years should not count towards NCAA eligibility. I think it's absolutely crazy, because you're really allowing these guys to have more exposure to big hits, big plays, that you're already worried about player safety, but now you're wanting an 18-year-old kid to go up against somebody that could be as old as 26, 27. And while I know that does happen, but that's kind of the anomaly than the norm.
Yeah, I'm not entirely read up on this lawsuit and like what the real stance of it is. I mean, I'm typically like kind of gung ho whenever like the players want to go for what they think is right, but um, you know, I was a JUCO athlete. I don't necessarily know what the argument is that like those 2 years shouldn't have counted like towards eligibility. I was there going to class, going to college, competing against other college athletes. I don't know exactly what the difference is. I mean, unless you're going to say NAIA doesn't count against your eligibility either. Like, I don't know exactly what the real argument is. I know the one thing about JUCO though is your clock does start when you go there, as opposed to maybe if you go to a post-grad prep school type of situation where you're still probably getting some credit hours, you're getting your grades in line, you're getting better, playing against good competition, and not using that year of college eligibility. So I can kind of see why like there's a little bit of like, hey, well, why doesn't this count and this does? But on the whole, I don't understand why you would say JUCO sports don't count as college sports.
Yeah, because I mean, I think JUCOs have their role. I mean, if you look at it in baseball, if you're not quite good enough to get a good draft out of high school, if you sign D1, you're playing D1 for 3 years. So you go junior college to go one and done. That way, if that's going to count for you to really improve your draft stock, then I think that it should count across the board and really allow these guys to be limited to their 5 years of eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it works out in the courts, but I don't quite understand this one.
Yeah, I mean, would you really want to hang out in Vandy for one more year?
Yeah, maybe it won't be in Vandy. Who knows?
He's coming to Monroe. No, that's really all I have, Shane. So we will end it with plugs, promos, and parting shots. I know that you're under the weather and powering through, but I'm sure you have a great plug, promo, parting shot to close this out.
I'll just take a parting shot at Jeremy, who couldn't be here, and just gets our ire. He's not going to put the gong in. Like, he's really not doing anything to help us out today. But other than that, I will go back to the old standard plug. And as we get the crossover season with everything, basketball, football, other fall sports getting towards tournament time, I'll just plug dnronline.com/sports, or you can find me on Twitter, Shane_DNR sports. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
That's the sign of too much NyQuil talking there, Shane.
No, it's time to take some NyQuil.
Nice. I'm going to give a promo shout out to, as Mike Hamlet, voice of the Warhawks, says, No Sleep November. It's in full effect where it's crossover season. To tell you how bad it is there, Shane, they were in New Orleans for a game against Tulane Friday night, rolled back into Monroe at 2 a.m. to be on site for Saturday's 11 a.m. kickoff at 6:30 in the morning.
That's pretty hard.
It hurt me, and I wasn't even involved with it. And that's just one guy. That's not to mention SID Martin, who was having issues there as well because he was on the bus. So all the support staff, we salute you for No Sleep November during the crossover season. December can't get here quick enough. And that's it. That's a wrap. That's a Jeremy-less show, Shane.
Yeah, we did it.
We should probably do that more often.
Was it better without me or without Jeremy, be honest?
I don't remember because I was so sick last week. I couldn't have told you that you weren't here.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you credit.